Hope you're having an amazing day. Today we have here the 7950X3D. So this is the second day review and I have everything installed on my PC from the latest BIOS to the latest chipset drivers and all that stuff. Okay, so let's take a look at our current system setup that we are going to run all the benchmarks here. And so first thing is we can see here we have the 7950X3D and we're utilizing the water block there. This is the EK Quantum Velocity 2. And then down here we do have the RTX 4090 Founders Edition. That's also using an EK water block. And we have the DDR5 memory from Kingston. This is the Fury Beast. I did a review recently on those. And lastly, we have the Dark Power 13 from Be Quiet. This is an ATX 3.0 power supply, 1000 watt, and it's pretty much powering everything that you see here. Lastly, the water cooling, we're utilizing a 360 millimeter radiator up here, and then on the side we have the 480 millimeter radiator as well. And as you can see, there's couple of fans here. There's a total of 12 fans. When I close the door here, there's really not much noise coming out, which is nice. And one question I know I'm going to be asked is probably you're getting so much negative airflow in there. At first I did without adjusting any of the RPMs, but after adjusting the fans, now it's pretty good. Because usually like air would come like through the slots here, but now everything is good. And here we have the Corsair iQ 7000X RGB case. And this thing is heavy. If you're gonna get one of these cases, just be aware of that. So that's our system setup. Definitely there's gonna be some other videos where you're gonna see this PC and performance. But for now, let's jump to the benchmarks. Looking at some of the information just before we begin doing some of the benchmarks here, the temperatures were hovering around 42, 43 Celsius. Which is great considering the clock speeds. So we're going up to 5.2 gigahertz. And looking down a little bit below, so around 50, like looking at the max here on idle, we're around 62 watts, which is pretty good. And utilization and all that, those numbers here as well. And on power options, I do have this set at ultimate performance, not on balance. So we're gonna try to get the max performance out of the benchmarks and games here. So for this test, we're gonna go ahead and run TimeSpy and see what we get. Alrighty, so we got a score of 28,443 here. But jumping to the temperatures here, so this went up to 75. I've seen this go up to like 86 max, but this is actually really good to see because right now we're running this at boost clocks, and if we're looking at the clocks here, it's going 5.2, 5.5, 5.7. So we're hovering around that range here. And utilization was looks like around 77.2. So next here, let's go ahead and run the CPU profile and see what we get for the 7950X3D here. We have the 3D Mark CPU profile results here. On max thread, we got a score of 13,920, and here are the rest of them as well. The 16, 8, 4, 2, and 1 thread. Looking at the temperatures, we got up to 81.5, and this also went to 164 watts, which is nice to see. And the clock speeds are here as well, and utilization was at 100%. So next we're running a PCMARK 10, and here we can see the idle temperatures and clock speeds as well. Looking at the score of PCMARK 10 here, we got a score of 9,675. Checking the temperatures for this one, it went a little bit higher here, so we went up to 81.5 Celsius. And it drew a power of 164 watts as well. And we can see the clock speeds here as well. And utilization, this went to 100%. Next, we are running the 7-zip benchmark here. So we're gonna have to wait a little bit here so we can see what results we're getting. Definitely the temperatures have gone way higher. So 87.8, we're going up to 87.8. Looks like it's dropping now. And here we have the results of the 7-zip benchmark. Taking a look at the temperature, we went to 87.8, definitely a little bit higher than previous. And power, it consumes 151 watts. And looking at the clock speeds, so they're ranging from 5.2 to 5.4. It didn't go to the, I can see some 5.7 here, and utilization at 100%. Now we're running a Blender benchmark version 3.4.0. So comparing the score that we got here with the 13900K, which has 568, definitely a little bit higher than what we have here. Hopefully with the future updates, this CPU will get better, because if you go ahead and compare the numbers, how much this costs and how much the 13900K costs with a Blender benchmark, definitely not worth it. Finally, time to jump into some games here. First, we're gonna start with Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, and let's go ahead and run the benchmark there. Alrighty, so these are the settings that we will be using. First, we're gonna do a 1080p run, and then we're gonna do a 2K as well, so 2560 by 1440. On quality, we're gonna go ahead and leave it on extreme and turn any upscaling off, because we kind of want to get like the real world results here. So we're at 1080p at extreme. So on average, we're getting 227 frames per second, and looking at the temperatures here, so we went up to 66 Celsius on the CPU. We can see the clock speeds, and it went up to 133 watts. Utilization wasn't that high, but we can see the wattage here. It went a little bit over the base clock here. And obviously this game is going to be using the GPU more, but just so we can see kind of like what we're getting. And the results are in for the 1440p resolution with the extreme settings, an average of 188 frames per second. Wattage 133, and then looking at the utilization, 24.6% here. Obviously, like before, we can see the GPU temperature, and the utilization is definitely more here. Now we're moving on to Cyberpunk 2077, and on the video settings, we have it set at 1080p. Then we're gonna also test out at 1440p. And on the graphics side, I have it set at Ultra, and DLSS, we're gonna go ahead and turn that off here, and everything else looks good to go. And let's just make sure that ray tracing is off here. Perfect. So on 1080p, we got the results here, and average FPS is 183, minimum 83, maximum 246. At 1440p, we're getting an average of 157. Minimum, it went down to 85. Maximum up to 241 frames per second. And now where the 7950X3D shines is on this game, the Shadow of the Tomb Raider. And first we're gonna go ahead and run it at 1080, and this is the menu here. So we have it full screen, DirectX 12. So DLSS, we're gonna go ahead and turn this off here, and so everything is good here, and we're just gonna leave this at the highest. And going under graphics, we're gonna go ahead and leave it at the highest as well. So everything is at the highest here, and everything is turned on. So we got the results here, 258 FPS average. And then we can see minimum, maximum, average down here as well. So it did go up to 385 at some points here. And at 1440, we got a score of average FPS of 225 and the max of 392. And these are the current settings. I've seen some reviews going around, and they are like doing this test on medium. So every test that I've done so far, it's the max. Just so you can kind of compare your results with mine here, and you can see like if it's worth it to even switch to this CPU. And I know it's still too early to probably make any decisions right now, but you can get an idea of like what kind of FPS we're getting here. Now jumping to Red Dead Redemption 2 here. So we have the resolution at 1080, so we're gonna go ahead and turn the graphics to the max here. Quality and anything else here, everything should be on the Ultra. Let's run the benchmark test now and see what we get. The 1080 resolution, we got a minimum of 84, max FPS 273, an average of 143. But I know there is the FPS lock on Red Dead 2 here, so I think it was trying to go a little bit more. So I don't know how I would take these results for the 1080p. So let's go ahead and test out the 1440p and see what kind of results we get here. So looking at 1440p, the results don't make much sense here. Minimum 47, max FPS 285, and average 143. Again, it was being capped at that 144. I saw it many times there. Now we're going to go ahead and test out Fortnite here at 1080, and we have it set on Epic, and we have turned off any of that DLSS, so that's all off. And it's running on native, and we have anti-aliasing on, and pretty much these are the settings that we have here. Alright, looks like we're averaging around 166-67 frames, 170, and right now we can see the GPU is being utilized at 97 while the CPU at almost 30% here, and we're getting around 63 Celsius on the CPU side of things, and 5.2 gigahertz, and it's using about 95 like from 90, like around almost 100 watts sometimes I see there. So around, it's staying around 92 to 95 right now. So we're getting around 150 130 FPS here. And just keep in mind that everything is native right now. There's no DLSS or anything going on right now. Okay, at 1440p, we can definitely see a drop on the FPS. It's staying around the one. I saw 90 a little bit there, so. And obviously, it's gonna. This is not like the perfect test scenario here, as I'm just running around in different places. I'm not going at the same place where I was before, but you kind of get the idea of like how much FPS you're getting. And I'm kind of running away from this guy that's trying to kill me here. Right now we're gonna go ahead and test out Death Stranding here, and if I go under graphics settings, and these are the settings that I'm using. So 1080 for now. Max frame rate 240, so everything is set to very high, and going below, so you can see everything. DLSS is off, and yeah, so everything else is on. So let's go ahead and start out. Let's go ahead and start the game and see what kind of performance we get here. So we're getting around 180. That's actually really good. So at 1080p resolution, we're getting almost 200 FPS sometimes here, which is good to see. And all the settings are at the max, no DLSS or anything like that. So let's go ahead and switch the resolution and see what we get now. Okay, with the 1440p, we're still hovering over 200 FPS. So let's just go back where we were before. Here it was a little bit lower. One thing I'm noticing is with the other games, the CPU wasn't being utilized as much, but here it's we're getting 67, like around under 70 in GPU and 40% in CPU, which is very interesting. Even more wattage as well here. So it's utilizing both, and checking out the temperatures, it's actually really good considering the boost clock is on here. We're getting decent temperatures. I know I have this at like with custom water cooling, but it's still doing a really good job. Next, we are running Hitman 3, and these are the settings that I will be running here. First 1080p, and then I do have any like DLSS off, ray tracing is off, but everything else is at either ultra or high here. This is the max that it will go. And let's go ahead and start the benchmark. So with 1080p, we're getting an average of 169.39 FPS. Now we're gonna go ahead and run at 1440p and see the results there. And with the 1440p, we're getting 116.68 FPS at the max settings. One thing to keep in mind, all the results that you saw coming in from the benchmarks, games, everything from the BIOS was default except Expo was on. So if you are setting this CPU at base clocks, you're gonna be very happy when it comes to temperatures compared to the boost clocks. But again, you're losing that FPS. Comparing this to the 13900K, the temperatures are actually, even on boost clocks, are very good. It doesn't go more than 80 something. So it's doing very good at that point. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions about the CPU, or if you want to see any games or benchmarks done to this, go ahead and leave a comment below. I'll be more than happy to do that as well. And that is all. I'll see you in the next video.